Where I get for you stories contemporary and consequential for India in a deep dive format. This week, Nagpur saw communal clashes over Aurangzeb's tomb. Why does the Mughal emperor inflame such passions on both sides of the communal divide, even 3 centuries after his death? Is it just about Aurangzeb, or there is something more to it? We explore. Also, frontier state in the northeast, Arunachal Pradesh, is reporting a churn around the revival of a 45-year-old law on convergence. What's up in India's land of the rising sun? That's our second story. Let's get going. Communal peace was shattered in Nagpur, the winter capital of Maharashtra, this week, following clashes between groups of Hindus and Muslims over removal of Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb's tomb. That also lies in the town of Chatrapati Sambhaji Nagar, earlier known as Aurangabad. A section of Hindus sees in the medieval monarch an oppressor of their faith, destroyer of their temples, and wants his memory removed from all public life. Muslims oppose it, or a substantial section of the community at least. According to Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, the trigger for Nagpur violence was provided by Bollywood flick Chhava, a biopic on Chatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, the son of Chatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the founder of the Maratha Empire, and an idol for the Hindu forces in the country.
आज महाराष्ट्रामध्ये विशेषतः म्हणजे मी कुठल्या सिनेमाला दोष देत नाहीये, खरं म्हणजे छावा या चित्रपटाने छत्रपती संभाजी महाराजांचा खरा इतिहास आपल्या समोर आणला. पण त्यानंतर राज्यामध्ये लोकांच्या भावना देखील खूप मोठ्या प्रमाणात त्या ठिकाणी एक प्रकारे प्रज्वलित झालेल्या आहेत.
Sambhaji had succeeded Shivaji and was executed on the instructions of Aurangzeb in 1689 for his continued defiance. The movie showcases that era of the Maratha-Mughal wars and has center staged the grudges of history on the Hindu side. Aurangzeb was a ruthless, brutal and missionary bigot. One could argue not very different from many ancient medieval kings and monarchs and emperors. The same ruthlessness that made him execute his brother Dara Shikoh also took the Mughal Empire to its zenith. Aurangzeb himself died fighting in Deccan, trying to control the newly acquired territories, and is buried in a corner of the shrine of Sufi saint Sheikh Zainuddin, who was Aurangzeb's spiritual mentor in Sambhaji Nagar. There was another side to the emperor: extreme religiosity, self-denial, frugality of living, and a spiritual pursuit within the strictest code of Islamic practice. The last of the great Mughals, Aurangzeb has come to symbolize the brutalization of their civilization in the Hindu psyche. He is directly associated with the destruction of the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi, the Lord Krishna temple of Mathura, and the building of mosques atop those temples. He reimposed the jizya, the tax on non-Muslims under Islamic rule, and removed the ban on cow slaughter, overturning the decisions of his great-grandfather, Emperor Akbar, who had brought them as part of his liberal Sulh-Kul policy for interfaith harmony. While the brutal Buddh-shikan in Aurangzeb inflames anger among Hindus for unfortunate reasons of politics, to Muslims, Aurangzeb represents a strong and assertive Islam. In the summer of 2015, I had gone to cover the drought in Marathwada region, which is almost an annual feature in that part of Maharashtra. The return flight was from then Aurangabad, and with some time at hand, I visited the tomb of Aurangzeb as a curious student of history. Look at this picture. 2 boys at the shrine paying their respects to the Mughal emperor. On way back, I asked my Muslim taxi driver what explained this reverence towards Aurangzeb. He in turn narrated at least half a dozen stories of Aurangzeb's piety and frugal conduct, that he would make copies of Quran in his own hand, that he would sew his own prayer cap, embossing Quranic text with a needle and thread on them. In another story, a visitor to a wartime camp was surprised to notice that while the soldiers enjoyed best of biryani, at sundown, the emperor was only having a bare bones lentil soup with some bread. Clearly, Aurangzeb was and is an inspiration for the Muslim youth on the ground. In English writer E.M. Foster's celebrated novel, A Passage to India, the Muslim hero Dr. Aziz dreams of following Aurangzeb into battle, his ideal champion of Islam. That's the problem. Foster spent only a year in India between 1912 and 1913 and could not miss the political construct of Aurangzeb as the hero. Are there no other role models for the Muslims? Is it lack of choice or actually a conscious choice? Pakistani-American scholar Akbar Ahmed wanted to rediscover his roots in the post-9/11 world. He was born in India, but his family migrated to Pakistan in 1947, where he grew up and went on to become Pakistan's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom in the 1990s. Post-retirement, he picked up a life in academia in the United States, teaching at Ivy League campuses of Harvard, Cambridge, Princeton, as also with some DC think tanks. His journey back to Pakistan and India is compiled in the book Journey into Islam, The Crisis of Globalization. The book was published in 2007. Ahmed was aghast after his visit to the Aligarh Muslim University. At a student interaction, when he asked who the role models were for the Muslim youth, guess what names he got in answers? Osama bin Laden, Maulana Maududi, Yasser Arafat, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. It was a paradox for which I was not prepared. The list could have been prepared in Deoband, Ahmed recalled. Before visiting Aligarh, he had gone to Deoband, where the madrasa students had showed him with pride a copy of Aurangzeb's handwritten Quran kept in the Deoband library. The more sophisticated students in the AMU crowd could come up with the names of M.J. Akbar, Asghar Ali Engineer, and A.G. Noorani as their role models before exhausting themselves of all ideas. Guess who was the President of India at that time during Ahmed's visit? APJ Abdul Kalam. The educated elites of the Muslim community have to ask this of themselves. The proud Aligs must ask this of themselves. Why does Kalam does not inspire them? You would have heard of Shaila Rashid, the student leader who became the face of JNU protests, leading the Tukre Tukre gang in 2016. In her changed avatar, she recently came out with a book, and it's impressive. Called The Role Models, it's a compilation of inspiring stories of Indian Muslim achievers. A.R. Rahman, Nigar Shaji, Sania Mirza, Huma Qureshi, Dr. Jamal Khan, Shams Alam, Dr. Zahir Qazi, Sana Hashmi, Lieutenant General Sayyid Atta Hasnan. It's a long list. Some of the names need no introduction. But the likes of Nigar Shaji, the program director of the low Earth orbit missions at ISRO, also the project director of Aditya L1 solar exploration mission, truly inspire. Dr. Jamal Khan, a pioneer in cancer immunotherapy in India, who has developed a treatment protocol that prevents cancer relapse by strengthening body's immune system post-cancer recovery. Rashid says in the book that role models shape aspirational metrics of a society. At one place, she laments that even APJ Abdul Kalam, India's missile man and former president, is put in a circle of doubt in most Muslim conversations owing to his pluralist views. Political and religious preoccupations pervade the Muslims, and there is a glaring absence of what could be called a Muslim civil society. As can be seen, there is no dearth of Muslim role models. Yet, let me persist. Ibrahim Khan Gardi was the artillery chief of the Maratha army in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. Afghan invader Ahmad Shah Abdali sent messengers to incite Gardi to switch sides in the name of Islam. Gardi not only refused but perished fighting till the end with his brigade of mostly Muslim soldiers. Kashmir would not have been ours in the shape that it is had it not been for Brigadier Usman, nicknamed the Lion of Naushera, for holding back the invading Pakistani irregulars in 1948. He was bestowed Paramveer Chakra. Havildar Abdul Hamid, another Paramveer Chakra, the hero of the Battle of Asaluttar in 1965 Indo-Pak War. Director of Intelligence Bureau in 2012-14 period, Asif Ibrahim was made India's special envoy on terrorism by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and even included in the National Security Advisory Board. This despite being a Congress appointee. Shows India, even under Narendra Modi, does not discriminate on merits. The educated Muslim elites need to dig out the writings of a forgotten intellectual from the recent past. Hamid Dalwai, incidentally from the same Maharashtra where Aurangzeb is buried. Dalwai called the mindset of Aurangzeb worship as the umbilical link of Indian Muslims with the Pakistan sentiment. Aurangzeb directly leads to Muslim separatism, according to Dalwai. He narrates how Muslims never chose a moderate as their leader. Between Dara, Shikoh and Aurangzeb, it was Aurangzeb. Between Abul Kalam Azad and Jinnah, it was Jinnah. Even Jinnah did not become Quaid-e-Azam till he remained the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. He became the leader of the Qaum only after he propounded the two-nation theory. A Dalwai is forgotten, but an Owaisi rules the airwaves. In his book, Muslim Politics in Hindu India, Dalwai recalls a quote of Maulana Hussain Ahmad Madni, the then head of Jamiyat-e-Ulema-e-Hind. The quote, "If Dara Shikoh would have triumphed over Aurangzeb, Muslims would have stayed in India, but not Islam. Since Aurangzeb won, both Muslims and Islam have flourished in India." Imagine, Madni was considered a great nationalist Muslim. There's an antidote to the Aurangzeb enthusiasts suggested by Hamid Dalwai. Let them be governed by the Sharia, but only and only if it is implemented in its totality. If a Muslim thief is caught, cut his hands in public. If a Muslim woman is found to be involved in adultery, stone her to death. If a Muslim is lying, he or she should be flogged in public. All enthusiasm for Aurangzeb would vanish. There's a model in Goa. The Catholic Christians freely admit that Hindus were persecuted by Portuguese who just happened to be Catholic Christians. Perhaps it is not incidental that Goa was the only state till recently to have a functioning common civil code. Hindus too need to think. On Thursday, we had some stupid Hindu activists defiling the signage marking Akbar Road in New Delhi. Obviously, these jokers are illiterate of history if they cannot differentiate between an Akbar and an Aurangzeb. The government, and before the government, the Hindu society needs to deal with such jokers with a heavy hand. Their acts weaken the voice of those moderate Muslims who can represent the best of Akbar, and strengthen the position of the radical elements within the community who are happy drawing inspiration of jihad from Aurangzeb. These jokers on the Hindu right need to know that most of the Deobandi Madrasa project Akbar as a heretic before young impressionable Muslim minds, even as they introduce Aurangzeb as a Hazrat, the most revered. Akbar is hated and reviled by the radical Islamists for his equal treatment of the Hindus, while Aurangzeb is held in high esteem for his suppression of the Hindu majority during his rule. Also, the fact that Marathas showed the large heart to let Aurangzeb remain interred in their territory in then Aurangabad, no attempt should be made to disturb the status quo. Whatever I have narrated in the last few minutes is the result of decades of scholarship in which I would have read a score or more books on Islam, their empires, and of course Aurangzeb. Yet, I am no expert. More importantly, I have no locus. Any change in the Muslims of India must come from the Muslims in India, not from me, not from the Hindus. Moving on.
हम घोषणा कर रहा है इंग्लिश से बोलेंगे अरुणाचल बिलोंग्स टू जीसस अरुणाचल बिलोंग टू जीसस स्वर्ग सुनो पृथ्वी सुनो सब 3 बार बोलेगा हालेलुया
Hallelujah, Arunachal is a Christian state. Did you hear that? This clip went viral this week in Arunachal Pradesh, India's land of the rising sun. The event was organized by the Arunachal Christian Forum and was meant to protest framing of rules in a 47-year-old anti-conversion law. Those from the indigenous tribes and other faiths have organized counter-rallies in support of the activation of the law that has been lying defunct since 1978. In September last year, the Itanagar bench of the Guwahati High Court ruled that the state should frame rules for the law within 6 months. The deadline expires end of March, making a jittery church double down on the protests and build pressure to block the development. Arunachal Pradesh had less than 1% of its population identifying itself as Christian in 1971. In the 2011 census, the number stood at 30%. Given that 2021 census is delayed, the Christian population of Arunachal might have already crossed 40%. This is a clear demographic change in a key border state of the country. Arunachal has Bhutan to its west, China-controlled Tibet to its north, and Myanmar to its east. And for a change, it's not a Hindu-Muslim issue. The indigenous tribes are up in arms. 100% of the converts to Christianity belonged to indigenous hill and forest tribes. Predominantly nature worshippers, those tribes, about 24, and their 100+ sub-tribes speak as many languages. The diversity of ethnicity, religion, and languages makes Arunachal a unique state of India. Listen to the president of the Arunachal Christian Forum again. The move by the present government to implement this law is unconstitutional, against the spirit of secularism and anti-Christ. Said Tar Miri, imagine the audacity. Forget for a moment the oxymoron of the law being called both anti-secular and anti-Christ. A law duly passed by the state legislature, assented to by the President of India, the rules for which are being framed on the express orders of the High Court of the state, is termed unconstitutional by a leader of the faith. It is this audacity of the church that has succeeded in installing the law from becoming operational for 45 years. There is nothing exceptional in the Arunachal freedom of religion law vis-a-vis similar laws in other states. It prohibits forced religious conversions and applies equally to all faiths, including the indigenous groups, Christians or Buddhists. The indigenous faiths protected under the 1978 Act include Buddhism as practiced among the Monpas, Membas, Sherdukpens, Khambas, Khamtis, and Singphos. Nature worship, including the worship of Donyi Polo by the Tani group of tribes comprising the Nishis, Adis, Aptanis, Gallos, Misings, and Tagins, and the Rangfrah faith, a tribal version of Vaishnavism practiced by the Tangshas, Noktes, and Akas. Ideally, if the Christian missionaries are not indulging in forced, induced, or fraudulent conversions, they should not fear anything. That's where the numbers come into play. Look at this. 0.79% or less than 1% in 1971, to 4.32% in 1981, to 18% at the turn of the century, to about 40% now. This is the most dramatic change in the religious profile for any state in India. Not only that, the conversions have devoured some tribes in their entirety. The Vancho tribe, for example, has an overwhelming 95% of its members adhering to Christianity. Similarly, 65% of those from the Nishi tribe identify themselves as Christians now. Tangsha and Nokte tribes have a 60% and 67% conversion rate respectively. It is clear that this growth is anything but organic. It has led to vanishing of ancient shamanic and animist traditions of these tribes, with the converts following churches, rituals, and religion instead. Another curiosity is that while the other three Christian majority states in the northeast, Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Nagaland, are Protestant, Arunachal has shaped up as completely Catholic. Is there a history to it? For example, in a rare show of foresight, Pandit Nehru, perhaps on the advice of senior Congress leaders of Assam at that time, blocked entry of missionaries into Arunachal, then identified as NEFA, the Northeast Frontier Agency, and thus kept it largely free from conversions. But the Indira government allowed them in 1972, and by the time that Arunachal became a full state in 1987 under Rajiv Gandhi, the evangelicals had run riot with their conversion activity. Some say Sonia Gandhi, being a Catholic herself, has something to do with it. We don't know. But this aggressive proselytization saw a major pushback from the indigenous tribes. That's where the interesting story of the Rangfrah and the Donyi Polo movements come into the picture. Not a religion by itself, the Donyi Polo began as a revivalist movement among the Tani tribes in the 1960s and 70s to counter the external influences of both Hinduism and Christianity. It has since developed a structured belief system that includes hymns, rituals, and an evolving theology. The Tani tribes, believed to have descended from a common ancestor, Abotani, and practice the Almighty in the form of the sun and the moon. With the Reformation, the Tanis developed symbols, a flag and temples, complete with a Sunday Mass to rival the church events. The story of the Rangfrah is even more exciting. The central deity of the Tangsa, Tutsa, and the Nokte tribes, the Rangfrah, had always been a crucial part of the cultural fabric, represented through stories, rituals, and sacrifices, but existed only in imagination and not in any form. Facing the might of organized religion from the church, the community members organized a painting competition in 1997 to draw their god, Rangfrah, which was later transformed into an idol and installed in a temple. In a statement of cultural assertion, the community leaders also formalized tenets of the faith by writing several holy books, codifying rituals, prayers, and precepts. The three tribes became immune to conversions subsequently. The church obviously resents the moat. The two groups are now at the forefront of activating the 1978 law. Look at this video of the ACF event. The speaker is mocking the Donyi Polo god as Zinda Wala Chalta Hua Bhagwan.
गौतम साहब हमारा सोशल एक्टिविस्ट है। मैंने सुबह उनको ऊपर बैठाया, मैं यहाँ ढूंढ रहा नहीं मिला। वो नीचे बैठ के वो जिंदा वाला चलने वाला भगवान को टेस्ट कर रहा था।
In another video, the tribal god is called Alien Ka Bachcha.
मेरा भगवान तो क्या बोला है, बाइबल में लिखा है, हम आपको मिट्टी से बनाए, आपको हम जीवन का साथ दिया है, मेरा चेहरा से आपको बनाया है, आप जैसे हम हैं आप वैसा ही है बोला, यानी कि मेरा ईश्वर मेरा जैसे ही था, ईश्वर हम जैसे ही था। और मामा का अगर ईश्वर कैसे था बोले थे, गोल, आग यही होगा, नाक भी गोल नहीं होगा, हाथ भी गोल वाले से निकालेगा, पाँव भी गोल वाले से निकालेगा। एलियन का बच्चा, इसलिए तो उसका माथा में चूल नहीं है।
It is not coincidental that the ACF came into being in 1979, just a year after the anti-conversion law was passed, and has been at the vanguard of blocking its implementation since. Such has been the muscle flexing by the body that during last year's parliamentary elections, it came out with a fatwa supporting the candidature of Nabam Tuki for West Arunachal and Boseram Siram for East Arunachal Lok Sabha seats. The Election Commission slapped a show cause notice, in response to which the nonchalant Christian body said it was non-religious association and escaped any further action. Yet, it has the temerity to threaten the present government if the Arunachal Freedom of Religion Act is implemented. Listen to this. Two forces are at work. Christian missionaries believe, as is proved by the viral video, Arunachal Pradesh is already Christian. Then there are the indigenous tribes who believe that the APFRA would put a break to the conversions and give a window of hope for their customs and traditions to survive the onslaught of evangelicals. The battle lines are drawn. By a quirk of fate, India's Minority Affairs Minister is from Arunachal Pradesh, and Kiren Rijiju is a Buddhist. Hopefully, a way out would be found soon. I would revisit this issue once the rules are out and implemented. Thanks for watching.
Caught on camera, Pakistan's brutality. Testimonies that you've never heard before. Why exactly are Balochi activists being targeted? All this and much more on this edition of This Is Exclusive.